everybody. While we wait for people to come in, let me set expectation and present who we're talking with. So I am Emanuele, I come from Acer, and we're here with this series of webinars with big figures in the tech world. And today we have Marco Russo with us. Marco doesn't need the introduction because if you're here, you know Marco. But he is one of the most, the biggest expert for the DAX language and Power BI in general and data modeling on the whole world, I will say, Marco. Allow me to say this.
I don't know. I just know something about,
he knows a little bit. He wrote a book or two.
Yeah.
So guys, still people is coming in, so thank you for joining. One thing we're going to do now is start to set the expectation about this call, and then you will hear mostly from Marco because I know you're here to hear from him. So I will try to just stir the discussion and you care more about what he's going to say to you, because trust me, he has very, very nice insights for you today. So what is changing in the BI world? What is the state of BI in 2026? What is really changing? So, Marco, every year we have a lot of buzzwords. Every year something is changing. It's not only AI, but we know in the past, there's a long story. You follow it. So why now things feel different? What's your take on it?
Look, I can mention, I watched a short video the other day where there is a CEO entering the stage of a big conference. Everybody claps. He says, agentic, everybody claps, and he goes out. So that's agentic is the
everything agentic.
So, he enters he's the only word he says agentic. So that's the buzzword today. It's more than a buzzword, to be honest, because we simply internally we say we cannot afford to not use AI first agents now. So clearly it's not only a trend, it's something that is actually produces deliverables and affects also our reality in business intelligence, of course.
Yeah. So we have guys, we have a rough agenda now. I think people are basically we are going full. What I want to ask you, Marco, is okay, we know the direction, we know what is the hype around it, but what has really changed? So if you look back at the past few years, practically speaking, what do we have now? What is changing?
So I think that the obvious answer that everybody says today is AI and so on. But the reality is that if looking at our world, business intelligence, data analytics, there is a change that has been happening in the last few years, even before the AI movement, which is that we changed the way we manipulate and transform data, moving from, let's say, low code, no code platforms like ETL platforms. Microsoft had SSIS, other Informatica has other tools. So there are many tools out there that were based not on creating a programming language or writing code. We also have a transformation made in SQL. We always had transformations made in the SQL language. But what we observed in the last few years is that starting from the big companies that have petabytes of data, the big data movement and the tools that created for these platforms have become popular also for much smaller databases. And so nowadays we see a lot of Spark and similar platforms where you basically are going back to writing code to transform the data. And this seems not so a big change, just because with the AI, you don't necessarily have to write a code manually and you delegate the job to an agent. But that's a big change, because we are moving from let's say platforms where it was relatively implicit what you were doing, because in a no code environment or low code environment, usually the description of what you do is more important than just the execution, because the execution is usually just that you provide a few parameters to a tool, and the tool does the job, but the intention of what you want to do is clear, is explicit in the transformation that you apply. When you move everything to the code, well, now you have to analyze the code, and so you enter into the domain problem of writing software, which I mean is well known. It is just not the first thing that you would have thought like 10 years ago, right? Because why should we write software to transform data? We build platforms to avoid that, and now we are going back. So I think that this is the biggest change. I'm not judging, okay? I'm just saying this is
we're observing. We're not judging.
Exactly. So and of course there are, as usual, there are pros, cons. My consideration is that, as always happens when there is a new trend, everybody tries to jump on the new thing just because it is new, and without thinking whether it is actually appropriate for the particular job or not. So that's something that is a little bit weird. Sometimes you see you will not get a Ferrari just to or let's okay, maybe you get a Ferrari because you want to show up, but you don't get a bus to do like 100 meters, right? So because the effort of moving the bus is much bigger than just walking between point A and from point A to point B, and I think that sometimes I see the same. So people that just use something that is absolutely not necessary for the kind of transformation that you have to implement, just because everybody does this, so they cannot be wrong, I should do this the same. No, we just have another tool, and we should always think carefully about what to use, when, why, and so on.
No, for this I completely agree, because I see always when like the big vendors come to you, but not only today, also in the past. Amazon comes to you, Microsoft comes to you, Oracle comes to you. Yes, we have this system, you can move petabytes of data. Okay, guys, but I'm not Amazon. I don't have petabytes of data. I don't need to do real-time operation on 2 billion orders a day. I wish, but I don't. So let me switch to something a little bit more cool for me. But now you told me about what was the trend that actually stuck. So the coding, the going away from no code to more code, let's call it like that. But this became more mainstream. What do you think stayed at the hype level? Do you have any idea?
What do you mean? Sorry. What do you mean?
Because we heard about a lot of like technology. This is going to revolutionize everything, whatever.
Yep.
But then what was really not revolutionize anything? Do you have anything in mind that comes to mind for this?
I mean, data is data. So that's I'm thinking whether I just don't want to start with a lot of vibration, but so let's say that so we have to enter into the specific of the transformation made by using the code. So the problem I see is that as I in part mentioned, sometimes this approach is not really justified. It seems more like something that was driven by the will of using some new technology or some new cool stuff rather than an actual need. And because I'm a software developer, I love coding, so I'm actually talking against my personal interest, right? Which is yes, develop. When you are a developer, you have more power. Everything is cool, but at the same time, you introduce many more potential issues. And we just want to transform data. For example, if we just have data that comes in a certain form and we have to transform the model in a different way for whatever reason, pivoting a table is always the same thing, right? The fact that I have a statement in SQL that can do this, in T-SQL, in SQL Server, in Azure SQL, in SQL Fabric, and other languages have the same form of, this is the transformation X, and I just do that transformation. So I read this, it's clear, and there could be a bug in the tool that I use. Potentially someone will fix it, but the idea is that I don't have to enter into, okay, how did I implement it? I don't have to expect some implementation issue because of the particular way I wrote the code for that particular transformation.
Yeah.
And when I see something like transformation that could be basically a SQL query transformed into 200 lines of code that could have problems and so on, and you don't even have petabytes of data. You just have like 10 million rows.
Yeah.
I mean, with 10 million rows, I mean, you can use any tool you want. It is just fast.
Yeah, you can use your phone. It's okay.
I mean, I'm just saying, look, it's a small though. You have we have big data. How many rows? 5 million. No, sorry, you don't. I mean, I know for your company, it's a lot of data. I get it.
Yeah.
It is more than an Excel file. Get it, but in
big data. You're correct, because it makes me reminds me when I was talking with my boss here, and he's like, "Oh no, we need to adopt this system of big data." I say, "Boss, we don't have big data. We have 100 million rows here, 200 million rows there, and that's the historical data you don't even need. So leave it."
And I forgot to mention another thing. These technologies have been, let's say, created mainly for a scenario where your raw data is basically a text file or a JSON file, something like that. When my data source is a relational database, I always feel something is wrong if I move this data out from a relational database and I move them into a file.
100%.
It seems like I'm losing something. I mean, what am I doing? Why am I doing that? Now, I understand that there could be, there are reasons for that. Okay, so it depends on the platform. So there are a number of things. But the point is that when we do this transformation, when we move the data this way, we are losing something. We are losing some feature, right? Because the relational database has some sort of guarantee that we don't have that. And I see all the problem of data consistency you have when you move the data out of the relational database. And I always struggle, why are we here discussing about reconciling foreign keys with tables because of the different time when you move the data, when the original database had everything in a single database? I mean, something is not clearly correct. So I tend to keep the data into somewhat relational form. I understand that maybe that you're not completing a relational database when you are, for example, in Fabric warehouse, just to name one. But again, it's just because something is trendy, it doesn't mean it's necessarily better. It could be, you want to standardize something, I get it. But leaving a tool just because there is a new tool doesn't mean that the new tool is better for everything. So maybe the new tool is better for a few things and not for everything. So that's a big change. By the way, I love the new tools. People say, "Oh, Marco doesn't like the new thing." No, come on, I love them. And but again, because I'm a developer, I like to play with these things. Am I more productive? I don't know. That's my point. So I'm not sure I'm more productive compared to other tools I used in the past. That's what I look at the results and I say, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if it is better.
No, I agree 100% with you, because what I've seen is exactly that: people trying to get us out of the relational database and into this new system for reasons. But between me and you and our followers here, to me, the reasons most of the time is more convenient for the vendor, because for them it's more convenient if you have a blob storage on an S3 bucket or whatever there than making the server run or whatever, because then you are more linked with them with the data residency and the compute and the whatever. It's a theory. Who knows?
It's a long.
And next session.
As usual, I think that admitting that there are pros and cons, that it is not true that everything is better. It will be a first step, because I don't know where to start talking with people that try to say that everything is better this way. No, actually, no. I mean, it is better in a few cases, but it is not better for a few other things that we we don't have a few features here, and so we have to reinvent the wheel to make sure data is consistent. But okay, I don't want to enter into too technical things.
Yeah. Next webinar we do only for conspiracy theories about vendors and data. Next one will be.
I don't go there. I don't go there.
Well, 5,000 people attending. Anyways, going back to what you said, it was the transformation, everything else. I see that the SQL language is maybe making a comeback, because between the going to write the code and managing it and doing transformation in SQL. So I see that SQL is getting much attention again. So what do you think about it? It's something that I guess you agree, but let's discuss.
So, I mean, this is I remember a few years ago, the buzzword was NoSQL, right?
I remember.
A few years ago, NoSQL, like SQL was a penalty for something, and so we should have removed SQL from the earth. Now, the reality is that SQL is not the best, let's say, language to manage unstructured data or semi-structured data, or data that you don't know what to do with, and so you just collect the data and you don't do any homework to try to create a structure. So you go, okay, let's put the data as it is in a JSON file, and when we need another level of detail, we just nest another JSON, and in that case you basically have something that is just a bunch of data that you want to manage in some way. And NoSQL makes perfect sense, because you don't know what you will do with the data, and you want to delay any decision later, which is fine, because that in that scenario you don't have a relational database, you don't have foreign keys constraints, referential integrity constraints, you don't have many of the features that you expect in an ERP, in a bank system, right? So, and when you have financial data coming from a relational database, I say, wait a minute, why you want to get rid of those features? That's a nonsense, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, NoSQL makes sense, but a few years after, we see, luckily, time usually makes justice, and so SQL is still there. NoSQL has a space in the universe, but is not bigger than structured data, and especially for reporting, especially for repeatable reporting, because when we create something in Power BI, most of the times we want to create a report that we will execute multiple times in a predictable way. It's different from I do an analysis out of the blue. I want to analyze the relationship between the people that buy this and the people that buy this other, and so I don't have any idea about what I want to do. I know that I want to search something in the data that I have available, and most of the time will be spent trying to figure out where the data is, and then apply the algorithm. But that is data science. Okay, data scientists do that. Reporting in a company is something else. It's not. They start from the same data, but they do different things. One is doing research, the other is doing monitoring. Right? We want to monitor how is are we within the budget or not? What is the trend? So we want to analyze the same dashboard every day or every week or every month. We don't want surprises. We want just the number. We want the numbers in the same place with the same chart with just an updated number. We don't want surprises. We don't want something that changes completely the shape of the information, because we want to focus on something that is repeatable. Just when you drive a car and you expect exactly the number in the same place, imagine that every day you see the same numbers in different places with different fonts. That's a nightmare. You don't want that. So SQL is not that is receiving much attention again. Let's say that it was let's say a little bit ignored for weird reasons. Also, for example, mentioning the transformation with Spark and other systems, also it seemed that we could get rid of SQL, but the reality is that the only let's say standard we have in data is SQL. Everything else is not. Okay, SQL in the CSV format. Okay, these are two universal standards we have. Now, I know SQL has different dialects, has different nuances, but let's say that if you know SQL in one system, transferring your skills in another system is pretty easy. You don't have to learn anything new. It's just that usually there are only details in the syntax. You don't have to learn new concepts. Okay, the concept is the same. And because the concept is the same, you basically use the same tool set for creating an ERP application or a business intelligence solution, a report, or something real time is basically the same. And in terms of knowledge, then in terms of the type of queries that you write, the type of performance you might expect, the type of optimization, this is different depending on the context. But I think that everybody understands that if you really want to be compatible with anything else, the first thing you have to know and you have to be able to talk with in terms of product is SQL, because it's the only universal. Is like English, right? So we're talking. I'm not an English native speaker. You're not. We're talking in English because we have a larger audience. Same thing.
Exactly.
You wanted to talk a language that everybody understands. You want to talk SQL.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Then you can talk SQL in a database, you can talk SQL in Spark, you can talk SQL in DuckDB or whatever new tool that you have, which is, I completely agree. So, having said this, and we can stay on SQL for hours but we have to go ahead.
By the way, I have a company. My company's name is SQLBI, right? And
Exactly.
the first three letters are SQL. So when people say, Marco, you don't like SQL, no, wait a minute. I named the company based on the name. Now, I'm used to write about DAX, the DAX language. I love DAX. And I think that DAX is necessary for certain things. At the same time, I would not suggest to anyone to ignore SQL. I would say, no. First of all, you have to learn SQL. It's like English, right? You first learn English, and then you learn another language if you want to travel. Makes sense. But if you don't know English, you will find yourself in trouble in many situations, right? Same for SQL. Yeah. So it's obvious that we need SQL. Now, does SQL everything? No, but that's another problem, right? So it's something that we cannot get, we don't want, and we cannot get rid of SQL at any point in time. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. SQL will be forever. And
yeah.
Comes to mind, like, you know, the meme where there is the two astronauts and the Earth, and one is going to shoot the other. And I imagine one of them saying it was SQL all along, because it was from the beginning. Yes. That's it. That will be maybe the cover of our of the
yeah. We'll see. Possible.
We'll see. So SQL, we get the data, we retrieve it, then we talk about DAX. So moving to DAX is more of the semantic layer, and so our data modeling. So only the resurgence of SQL, we've also heard about this renaissance of the semantic layer. Why do you think that somebody and people are resumed talking about this? Do you think it's some of that cultural? People understood finally what's going on? What's your take on this?
So there are different things here. Once again, the simple answer, because of the AI, but the reality is a little bit more complex, because if we look at the last many years, okay, we talk about decades here. The idea of having a single definition of the information that are meaningful for the business is not new at all. No. I remember when I started my career in the BI, there was the universe of business object, which is absolutely the same thing that we describe today as a semantic model. Okay, absolutely the same. Conceptually, it is the same thing. What changed over the years are the tools, the languages used, the additional metadata that we use, and a number of things around it that determine that the product was more successful than others. And over the years, we have seen that. So we have seen the different products emerged. All right. So let's say that the products based on the description of a multi-dimensional model, which is usually implemented in MDX, is something that has been implemented not only by Microsoft, but also by other vendors. SAP, we have, I don't remember the name of the tool that is open source that is producing MOLAP tools. And so the advantage of these tools is that because Microsoft published the API for the OLEDB interface, basically Excel is the client that can connect to all these models, right? So, I mean, Excel is everywhere in every company. Nobody can, and the fact that you can connect the pivot table with so many different systems of different vendors is actually a reason for the success for those platforms. There are many platforms that don't have so many users. So maybe they have a success in a particular countries, and outside of those countries nobody know them. And again, but the idea is because they have the same infrastructure, they could have, they have been able to focus on a single thing. Nowadays this is not happening for Power BI, because Power BI has a different language and a more, I would say, more evolved semantic model for certain point of views, even though it lacks a few features that were in multidimensional. And I'm just talking about the Microsoft universe. And if we go outside of Microsoft, we have other products with other characteristics. We have Click, for example, that has a semantic model that has characteristics that are similar to what Microsoft also did. And there are others that are trying to catch up. But to be honest, today they are far from the set of features and the adoption that these other tools have. So that's when I see something, okay, it's very promising, but then winning the market is a completely different story.
I know. We've seen the Gartner quadrant. Yes.
You could also have the perfect product and you can still lose, right? Because getting traction is way more complex than just having the best product. That's sometimes that is not enough. So of course now people realize that I think that we can see this with the models, the large language models that are used to translate natural language request into a SQL query. Okay. Simply said, today we know that it doesn't work having a user entering a question, getting a lot of data, in a randomly placed in a database. Usually it doesn't work.
No.
The cases where this work are in demos where something has been done before. There was a preparation of some kind, which means that, okay, we need the context so that the query makes sense, the request makes sense. And okay, so we should provide additional description, metadata. Oh, you know what? A semantic model already has all the information that we need.
That's the point.
And so the obvious idea is that, okay, so if we have a semantic model, we have what we need. Sometimes it's called a semantic layer, not a semantic model. We can start a conversation about what is the right term, but nevertheless, the idea is that tables, columns, not enough. Relationships, not enough. Measures, description of the business logic to apply when you run the query, okay, better, but not enough for the AI. For the AI is much better, but it's still not enough, because we still have to provide the meaning of the names, because the same name can have different meanings in different industries. And so in order to get a sense of the request made by the CFO of a company that sells toys is probably different from the company that sells cruises, right? So just to mention two completely different, the same job, the same position in a company, the same data, the same balance sheet, but the language they use is different. And it's potentially different, not just for industry, but also for companies. So you can have two companies in the same industry that use different terms because they, the company culture uses to call that particular metric this way and not another way. And so you want to provide this context to the LLM. The same way as you have a new hire and you have to say, oh, look, here is how it works. You don't expect the new hire to be able to solve any problem day one. Not possible.
Exactly.
It could be 15 days, it could be 1 month, it could be 6 months, it could be 1 year. It depends on the complexity of the company, but it takes time. Now, we can compress this time, but we still have to do, we have to put this knowledge somewhere and transfer this knowledge. That's the idea. How? That's a fun conversation because, for example, the idea is that how many models do we need?
Yeah,
that's a forever. Everybody in the history of the analytics wanted to do the single version of the truth. And
yeah, you told me has been called in different ways for the past 30, 40 years. But
I mean,
still here.
no, it's so we can use different names, but the idea, we are attracted to this idea that there is only one truth. Makes sense, right? So we like the idea. The problem is that the reality is more complex, because otherwise we will not have any discussion or any conversation. We will always, if it was simple, if there was a single truth, we will all agree on that truth. Because we don't agree on basically anything. Look at the politics. You basically can say, well, maybe that there are different truths, right? Everybody has their own perspective, and the perspective is the key word here. So again, you could have the same third form relational database. And why do we transform for analytics a third form relational database into a star schema, for example? I mean, we can have many explanations, but I think that the more important point that many people forget is that the third normal form has many ways to see the data. Because the goal of the third normal form, that is the technique that we use in relational databases for OLTP applications like ERP, like orders, the goal is the data consistency. The goal is to make sure that if you made a deposit in your bank account, you have that money, okay? And that money does not disappear for some strange bug. Or from the point of view of the bank, even though you will like to do that, but when you withdraw an amount, you want to make sure that you don't have that amount again in the account available for another withdrawal. I mean, the bank wants that, and you would like, and I would like, but we cannot.
Not today.
Not yet. And so that's that kind of data modeling is designed for software that manages the data. Okay, that's when we want to look at a report. Usually we want a simplified version of the truth that recap, okay, well, I want to see the revenues by month. Now, the amount of work to transform the information that we have in an OLTP system is bigger, and this will be only a performance issue. But the real issue is that you might find that a few relationships could be ambiguous in the relational database. And so the way you want to interpret the data is more clear if you follow certain guidelines in data modeling. So basically, we transform the data model because we make more intuitive to read and aggregate the data when we consume the data. If we don't do that, the number of information we have to provide to the system to answer to the question made by the user is at least one order of magnitude more, right? So you were saying if now we have to do an effort to get a star schema, a snowflake schema, and provide additional information, additional metadata to explain what is the meaning of what we have, now multiply this effort by 10 at least if you want to do the same over a normalized database, because in that form everything is more complex. I like to make examples. You might have a single table with a list of I don't know, cities, states, countries, continents. Why do we have to duplicate this information in many places? Makes sense. But now you could have in your analysis the country of the store, the country of the warehouse, and the country of the customer, not to mention the country of the supplier.
Yeah.
So technically we have one country, but from a logical point of view, no, we have 4 different countries. Okay, I don't care whether there is a single table, so this way is consistent. If we change the zip code here, it will be changed in a single place. Fine, I don't want to know that. As an end user that want to query the data,
they don't care.
The data grouped by country of the store. I don't want anything else. Now, this is the example that I want to make. If my data model is close to the way I describe the data in the analysis, in the analytics, this is easier. I still have to do some work, but let's say it's easier. If I don't have this transformation, now all of a sudden I have to invent the definition of, okay, we can see the country under 4 different perspectives, and I have to explain to the model what to do in order to do the right joins for each of those perspectives in a deterministic way. Because guess what? If you write a query one day, you expect the same query the day after. If you have a certain, I don't know, 90% of the times we get the right path because, LLM could make something wrong. So this is not acceptable in a report. Come on, right? So we want a deterministic behavior. And in order to obtain a deterministic behavior, we have to provide the information that is needed. So that's the reason why we use the semantic layers, but also the reason why we implement the data in a way that make it easier to also build the semantic layer on top of it.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is modeling remains the foundation of what we need nowadays. So how this
I made the example. I made this long example with the cities and the countries. Just because I think is the one that better explained to anyone who does. I mean, you can know anything about data, databases, relational databases, but this example is clear, right? How many? I can create a single list of the cities, but when I analyze the data, I want to see 4 cities, not 1. Because if I see 1, then I have to do an additional effort to say, okay, no, I want to see the city. I want to group by the city of the supplier. How do we provide an easy way to navigate the data? So at the end of the day, what we show to the user is something that is, I would say, more verbose than what we have in the original data, potentially. But that is because we want to make it easy to provide the data to the user. So,
absolutely. Yeah. But in this day and age full of automation, AI, and whatsoever, do you think that this has made modeling easier, more difficult? It has been hidden by, I don't know, the asking the AI, whatever. What's your take on this?
So the problem, I think, is that I used to say that if you know what you want to do in terms, if you are able, let's say, example number 1, I could create a database, I could create all the transformation, and I could create the semantic model. I'm just tired, but I could, right?
Yeah.
If I ask someone or something to create this for me, I will provide all the information to make sure that what I get is what I want. I will not provide a generic, I want just a report that does this. No, I will say, look, I want to create a model in Kimball with these dimensions, these attributes. And so I will use that like a terminology because I want to drive the creation in a certain way, right? And I want to obtain a certain result. Why? Because I know that the design choice in terms of architecture, in terms of implementation, will follow what I think is a good idea. Now, I could ask the LLM to do the same, right? I could reach a point where I say the LLM, okay, create this, but using these practices, and I could transfer this information in a skill. But again, there is always a limit to what I'm able to transfer as an information in the prompt and in the markdown files that I provide as a context. And so there is always the need to have an idea about what you want to do. Now, the fact that something is easier to obtain doesn't mean that it always works as it should. If I make this other example often. For example, in DAX classes, I show that I explain, in DAX, this is a best practice, right? We should write a code this way, not this other ways. Then I show that by asking a question to an LLM, depending on small details that I put in the question, I can get the right or the wrong definition of the formula. And so the LLM knows how to write a good formula, but it could be distracted by the way I wrote the question. And so if I'm not able to judge, to evaluate the result, I could be in trouble. this is a small example, but you can enlarge this example to the data modeling. If I make it clear that I want to create an analytical model, I want to create a data model that could be reused later, it can be expanded later, and blah, 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 probably, even though I don't mention dimensional model, I will get something that resemble what I want. But for example, it's always the same problem of making decisions in architectural terms. What I like of the latest LLMs, very powerful, is that they try to, if you ask the right prompt at the beginning, they establish a conversation about the architecture before implementing anything. And this happens for both coding, writing documents, or writing databases. Okay, so you establish a sort of architectural conversation, and then you agree on a plan where you discuss how you will do things. Okay, that makes sense. But again, just because we have the LLM, it doesn't mean that the data modeling principles are obsolete. This should be clear. If I have an LLM that just creates the query that goes on the OLTP system in the third formal norm database and create the report that they want, if I have a particular urgency for that, for running that report once, maybe it is the best choice.
Yeah.
But if I have to repeat this query every day, multiple times a day, is a very bad idea. In that case, for performance issues that I could create on the system. So, it's not that just because someone does the job for me, everything we learned is no longer relevant. It is still relevant, just relevant more for the LLM than for me. But at the moment, we still have to provide guidance and control, because at the end of the day, we are responsible. The moment we are no longer responsible, we are also, disposable.
Useless, yes.
If I don't even have to check what happens, I'm done. I can do something. I can play poker all day, no problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Check, but yeah.
No, but by saying this is like I always make a joke saying the context that you gave the AI is very important.
Yep.
But more important is your own context, because you as a person needs to know more or less the architecture, the structure, the best practice, what you can do. Then maybe the AI can help you write it down. Okay, I'll write it down faster for you because I'm an AI, I'm a robot, I can work 6 hours, no stop, no sleep, no water, no anything. But you need to have a baseline of knowledge. And this leads us to our latest chapter, which is, okay, but how do people get this kind of knowledge? Because I'm pretty sure the university are not keeping pace with this. So how?
That's so in reality, the situation is complex because different types of education, high school, universities, colleges, what I see, and not only for, I seen many countries. Okay, I seen the system in many countries, and what I notice is that there is a trend to, let's say, follow the latest news. So you have these dichotomies. For a few things, we are stuck in the past, but in other things, we are too much following the latest trends, and there is a gap in the middle, which is the needs of the companies working day by day, right? So what I see is that it's extremely unusual to find courses based on current used technology. So many times, talking about specific products, the university tends to use open source software, even when 90% of the market is made by commercial software. I don't want to talk about Microsoft. Think about ERP software. Okay, nobody. I don't know if there is a market share of open source ERP. I have no idea. Just if there is, it's so small that I never saw anything about that. So the reality is that there are players that are big players, and so these players know that because no college produces skills in that area, they have to provide the training that is needed. Now, this is I wanted to mention something that is very clear and very understandable by everyone, and many people think that this is the right thing to do, by the way, because they say no, the university should not provide education about a specific product, perhaps maybe. But again, fair point, but I would say something in the middle, it should be possible. And actually, I saw many of these cases where something in the middle is actually what happens. However, a topic that is no longer in the curriculum of any course is data modeling. Data modeling, not for the third normal form, because that is a curricula that is usually part of the software development. Okay, if you're a software developer, sooner or later you have to manage databases, and probably you have to know something about third normal form. So usually, when it comes to SQL, this is what is in the topics of the training of the course. But for data analytics, star schema, data warehouse, multidimensional databases. There is something about big data, but again, this is for data scientists. What about the millions of people that run the reports every day? That's not covered. Now, what I see is that when you enter a company, usually there are people that are at least 4 years old that say, no, we have to do this way, this way, this way, and they're guiding the company this way, because the new hires usually simply don't have the knowledge, and with the knowledge they have, they try to reinvent the wheel, just to make a simple example. And we didn't see big impact of that yet, because as I said, the generations, is a generational problem that is you can clearly see that, for example, young startups usually tend to use only new systems, and when it comes to reporting, it seems that they are trying to reinvent the wheel. When you look at what they do, they say, well, guys, but do you know that somebody already solved this problem like 20 or 30 years ago, and you're just doing something new? You think that you're doing something new, but actually you didn't Google. I mean, you didn't Google, literally, not even using an LLM. And so this is what is happening at the moment. But of course, the fact that this is not taught anymore, while we have products that are based on these assumptions. And again, you say, okay, but these assumptions are wrong. No, the point is that these assumptions are correct. Because as I explained before, the thing is, we can play around this a lot. But if you don't do what we are used to do with, for example, let's say we use star schema and dimensional modeling. Is the only way to do things? No. But let's say it's the more common one. Okay, let's use it. Is there another way? Probably yes. But again, there should be a way. If you want to replace something with something else, first, you should describe something else. When I don't see the description of something else, I'm trying to figure out, okay, but what are you actually trying to do? Because how do you solve the problem that I described before? How do you solve the problem of going from a third normal form to an analytical form without creating a query for each report? Because if the solution is, oh, but we simply create a query for each report, okay, then we will see in a couple of years when you will have 3 different reports that produce the same number with different numbers, the same result with different numbers. So that's because this is what is going to happen, because you don't have a central definition of how to interpret the data from a financial point of view, from a business point of view, from a technical point of view. So this is what you're lacking if you try to skip everything. And I'm not saying that it's impossible to find a new way, but again, I want to see what this new way is. And just providing information, additional attributes to the original data in any form it is, come on. What about data quality? Okay, data quality is the #1 problem that we have to solve when we transform the data. Because if it is only how to shape the data, that's an easy problem. The problem is that when you receive the data, many assumptions that you would have made are violated by the data that you get in. What do? Do you accept it? Do you discharge it? Do you create a report about what is wrong? As long as you report number of likes on Facebook, 10% of error, everybody happy. The moment you report financial data of your company, 0.1% of difference is the difference between going bankrupt or at least getting a fine. Companies that have to provide quarterly report, they would be in trouble if they cannot produce the right number. So these are the things that should be, of course. The importance of the data can be different. I went between two extremes just to explain my point. And in the middle, you have everything, because there are cases where, okay, but in this case, we can accept a small quality data here. Makes sense. But you have to be aware of these things. And just thinking that you can get rid of everything, all the knowledge, all the practices, just because you can have someone else doing the job for you is like I know that this is not related, but for example, the problem of the outsourcing. I was talking the other day about companies that adopt BI. What is the approach for the BI of the company? And I always thought that, well, I can outsource many things in the company, but the last thing that I would outsource is preparing managing the data. So managing the data, that is the main number one asset of the company is your data, right? And so relying on a I'm not saying, I mean, I'm a consultant. I always
you wish you could do more.
Well, of course, you need consultants, but the goal should be to absorb the knowledge of the consultant,
yes,
into embed, so into keep this knowledge into the company, into the people of the company. If you rely on an external entity, an external company, assuming you didn't create a company to serve yourself only for other reasons that are not fiscal reason or whatever, but if you rely on an external company to build every report, you have a conflict of interest. They have a conflict of interest,
and they own you because
but
your data.
But you are no longer in control.
Exactly.
And because of the importance of those data, I'm not saying that you are blackmailed constantly, but potentially, yes. You think 3, 4, 5 times before changing the vendor because of the implication that this could have. And so it's beyond my understanding how companies can afford that. And I have seen so many. And when I saw the company that had been able to do this internally, the difference is between black and white. The difference is outstanding. The company that had been able to create their own business intelligence department, or whatever you want to call it today, they are those companies that work better from any point of view. They have the better margins. They have the better reaction to the market. That they are more competitive at the end of the day. So that's what I see. So from a C-level, to me, is a no-brainer, and I would like to hear from a C-level. Oh, no, this is better because, and I would like to see the reason, because I don't see the reason in all the examples that I have seen going the other direction. So it's perfectly okay to get consultants to help you, but they have to help you, not to replace you, because if they replace you, then you are no longer in control.
Oh, they need to help you, technologically speaking, with best practice, whatever, like you do with your courses and everything else. You do support the internal team. And this is something I actually see myself in my team, because I am the lead of the BI team also in Acer. And the most difficult thing is not the technical part, because the technical part, I can buy Marco's book. We did these courses last year. By the way, there is a new workshop coming before the Ticino Data Conference at the end of October. We will send the link also to that. But the most difficult thing for us is always interacting with the business, extracting all the business semantics to actually create the semantic layer or semantic model. And I will add, you said that these different companies in the same field have different languages. But if the company is big enough, different departments in the same company have different languages about the same thing. Because maybe for one department, the order is one thing. Maybe the supply chain cares about only the shipping of the order. the other department cares only about the delivery of the order, and finance cares about the invoicing of the order. So the same thing about the order is 3 different concepts, even if you are in the same company. So first thing first, I will say, people, internalize your knowledge, create your semantics, get it on your own control, because that's the most important thing. Then technology you will learn, and there is AI helping you the practical application of writing the code or whatever. But if you own your processes, if you understand them, then that's the most difficult part of the job. This is what I also see in my day by day. I say this all the time, so people are tired to hear me saying this, but I completely agree with what you said. So that's it. We are mostly in time.
Yep.
We would have more time for Q&A, but let's see what we have to do, because I saw a question in the chat. So guys, while we answer this one, if you have other question in the chat, feel free to write it down. Meanwhile, I will relay this question from Jeroen, I hope it's pronounced correctly, which is touching yet another aspect of how the technology is evolving, because he's asking about the new data product like the Rayfin apps in Fabric. So, Marco, have you played with it? What do you think? I think it's connected to what you were saying about more code being embedded in our apps, in our data layer.
Yeah. So, okay, about Rayfin, it's I would say good move from Microsoft, because they made something before someone else made it. For once, they instead of being the follower, they were the leader for once. Because sometimes we have the opposite situation. What I mean is that if you look at Rayfin, is nothing that you will not have been able to do by yourself. Okay, you just have to get the advantage is that you have everything in a single application, in a single platform, and the security is integrated. Great thing. That said, the ability to query the model through the XML endpoint and creating a web application is not new. Of course, it is made simpler. It is made easier to deploy. That's key. What I think is a problem is that the demo that Microsoft made doesn't make any sense, in my opinion, because you don't create an OLTP application in a business analytics platform. It literally made no sense. And I understood that, they said, but we shown that, because if you can do that, you can do everything. Look, I get the message, but only a small number of people got the message. Okay, so it's clear that I can see it. So but the problem is that I also understand that they wanted to avoid the direct comparison with Power BI. Now, it's a tool, right? It's like any other tool. When you have a tool, the obvious, I always struggle with this. Okay, there is a new tool. The new tool replaces everything else. No. Okay, simply no. We grew up in a constant addition of new tools without replacing everything else. Okay, that's normal, and the new tools cover areas that were not served well from the previous tools. So it happens that for a few things, the new tool replaces the old tool, but not for everything. Okay, not for everything. For example, do you really want to replace Power BI for the reports in a company created by users that don't have a specific, skill and so on? No. Why? Basically, governance. If the report is a declarative approach, I can inspect it automatically. If the report is made by code, it is much more difficult to analyze, to validate, and to check, for example, that nobody wrote an if something happened, show this number instead of that number.
Yes.
I mean, I know that people say, oh, come on, Marco. I know, but think about this. Think about this. With the code, the level of analysis you have to, the security review, the auditing that you have to do on that report is way more expensive than what you have to do in a Power BI report, because a Power BI report doesn't have much. and so it doesn't, it works, it doesn't work, but the report by itself doesn't change the numbers. The model can change the number, but there is a single place where I can look at that. If I have a control of the client, this is gone. And this is just the first example that I have in mind. I can continue for hours. However, if I want to make one dashboard amazing to show in the lobby of the headquarters of the company, of course, I get a good designer, I get something fancy, something that provide the identity of the brand with real data, moving data, fantastic. Just an example. Should we do all the things this way? No, but if I wanted to do that kind of report, I had problems in Power BI. I had too many constraints in Power BI, and this tool solves exactly this problem, like many other problems. For example, if I want to integrate a report with something that acts, that makes action in my order system, for example, or in my CRM, with Power BI, it's not that you cannot, but it's very difficult. You have a lot of, you have to do some acrobatic between DAX and the bookmarks and this and that. Come on. I want a regular application where I have some numbers and a few buttons. That's it. Okay, this is another case where it makes sense. If you are a very skilled person, very passionate person, who want to create many reports with the Rayfin, good. But don't believe for a single second that a company that has 2,000 people creating report, not because it's their dream in the life creating report. They want to go home, play with children,
as soon as possible.
Make sure that everything is good. That they don't care if it is fancy or not fancy. They don't care. That's the reality, is that they don't care. They don't care. And if look at that, you have at the same time, more or less at the same time, you have Rayfin, and you have another tool, which is the Power BI Dashboard Bridge, that enables someone to use, for example, VS Code to vibe code a report and a model in Power BI. Well, the second one is much better for those users, because those users will still generate an artifact that can be inspected, can be analyzed, can be reviewed easily, not creating something that has the same cost of a security review of a piece of software, because you are basically deploying a web application. I love it. Okay, personally, I love it. I love it.
But would you give a business application, web application, automatic deploying tool to the business?
No. 99% of the users in my company should never use that feature to deploy something. No, never. Because of the additional cost, additional burden this implies. It's very easy. It's not it's good to use a feature, but how many times you said, oh, I would like to do that, and someone from the security team said, no, guy, no, you cannot. Oh, I want to install this new tool. No, you cannot. Same thing. I mean, now you want to generate imagine this. You want to generate, imagine the security team that when they hear this, they will say, are you crazy or what?
Yes.
You cannot install an external tool because people are afraid of vulnerabilities, phishing, attack, and so on. Now imagine what? You can build your own application, creating by vibe coding something that gets library wherever they want. They put this is the total nightmare for the security team in the company.
And that application is also shown directly to the executives. Maybe it's like perfect.
Look, I don't want. It's a good feature. Yes, it's a feature that everybody should use and should replace Power BI. Come on, no, simply no. That doesn't make any sense.
No, to me, it's a good feature for reducing friction for BI developers, or whatever, to deploy in the same platform that they already have. So maybe you already have the capacity. You don't have to ask for CapEx. You don't have to ask for any budget. I want to deploy an application. Okay, I don't have to deploy the resource in Azure, in AWS, in Google, whatever. You just deploy it there if you know what you're doing, and it's reducing friction also from the administrative side, because I am the owner of the capacity. I decide I need to deploy this application. Yeah. I know the code is vetted, perfect. But as we said, I will never imagine let's give this opportunity to any business user that has no idea. So if you want to, I can tell a very quick story, which is, agentic coding people. I really enjoy that people are really trying also in my company, coding agents whatsoever. But one day somebody came to me, part of the business came to me and asked, "Oh, I need for you to do something in order to complete this application I'm doing. Can you please do this action for me?" And the action was to create an app registration on Azure, which had access to everything, all the SharePoint sites globally. And I was like, okay, I like you're good that you want to do this for yourself, but maybe you don't understand the implication of what you're doing. And I don't want, imagine if this was literally free. Like, okay, do it, whatever. That's maybe a little bit too much.
Makes sense.
Okay. I don't know, Marco, if you have time for another question. Okay. Then we can answer the question from Mattia, which is on the same line. He's asking about the fabric data agents and if they would replace Power BI reports. I don't know. You tell me.
That's a big jump. I mean, data agents can do many things, but I will do a step aside and think about this. At the end of the day, so I made this example like 30-40 minutes ago when I said, okay, let's say you enter your car and you drive. Okay, in a few years nobody will drive anymore, but as long as we drive, we're used to keep the steer, the steer wheel with the hands, and we look at the dashboard to see the speed, right? Now, every car can be different, but usually we drive almost always the same car, and usually we have in the same car the speed in the same place with the same phone, with the same, everything, right? So we are used to that because it would be a distraction to have this information presented in a different way every single time. Imagine every day you enter the dashboard, every morning you have a new version of the dashboard and a new font, a new position, a new position of every element. You will get crazy. At a certain point you say, no, guys, stop. I want one, because my goal is to spend the lowest amount of time possible on this report, just monitoring something that changes. Many reports work this way. Many reports in the company work this way. Now, when I look at the idea of the conversational BI, so you ask a question and you get an answer. We had this technology for many years, not at the level of quality we have today. I completely agree, but I remember, I think it was before 2000, Microsoft released something that is a natural language to SQL, something like that. So basically, there was an engine that was transforming a statement in English into a SQL query. It never took off, right? But it was for the technology that we had at the time. It was there was an effort, and there were cases where it worked, right? Because the demo was working and so on. Over time, this technology constantly improved technically, but never, ever, ever been adopted. Has been never adopted anywhere. Adopted in numbers. Okay, so and I have I'm suspicious that this is one of those features that everybody want to show a demo about that. Nobody want to use every day. For the same reason, I want to enter every day in the car and see the dashboard showing the speed in a different position. Now, you may say, well, but you can use the Fabric agent to create a report. Okay, but then we are still creating reports. So we have to make a decision. If the agent is going to replace Power BI because it is going to provide the answer to the question, my point is that it's a good point, good idea for all those scenarios where I want to ask a arbitrary question that is not a common recurring question. Common recurring question is, okay, what's the margin this month? Or what is the budget? So, the classic, your dashboard. Imagine every day having to repeat, oh, okay, so I want to see this, and that. You know what you do? You record your voice, and you, because at a certain point, people will get, imagine in a few generations, we start to talk with the computer. Nobody uses the keyboard anymore. At a certain point, nobody is able to type anymore on a keyboard, which is not bad in general. I'm just saying that when you want to repeat the same thing, you will end up saying, okay, repeat what I did yesterday. Okay, so
Exactly.
So again, we have to look at, we don't have to be victim of the hype. A vendor has think about this. When you think about Microsoft, you think that there is one Microsoft. The reality is that there are hundreds of thousands of people working in Microsoft. When you think about Power BI, you think about one product. The reality is that the Power BI is the sum of so many features handled by so many PM. And guess what? I have a new feature. I overhype my feature. It's human. I have a new feature. I want to show to the world what I've worked on for the last 2 years of my life. This feature is amazing. It does everything. But the reality is a little bit different. Okay, but wait a minute. This is a huge product, right? And maybe that your feature is important. I'm not saying it is not important, but before saying that it's going to replace everything, well, it's no, it's not going there. I mean, there are still paginated reports that live well in many companies.
Yeah, people love it.
The fact that someone, oh, Marco, but we don't use paginated reports. Okay, you know what? You are one of the 400-something thousand companies that use Power BI. These are the number of tenants with Power BI, probably more than 400,000. That's the number Microsoft made, which means that in percentage, well, if you have other 3 friends, you are 0. Something percent, 0.00 something percent, so nothing. Basically, you are not, from a statistical point of view, you're not relevant. And the reality is that when you have like 10% of the company using paginated reports, or even just 5% of the companies using paginated reports, well, 5% of the companies with 400,000, you do the math, right? We're talking about 20,000 companies, which for a few startups is is their total addressable market is 20,000.
You wish you had that number of customers.
What I'm saying is a niche market in Power BI is a full market for a company, and Power BI is just a fraction of the Excel users. So to put this in perspective, remember, Excel is the winner, okay? Excel is by far the more successful product ever. Everybody uses Excel, period. Full stop. Everything else is just a detail. Now, in terms of adoption, of course, in terms of revenues is different. But when you look at how many people do something in Excel, for everyone that uses not the creator, you have one consumer of Power BI. Okay, for one consumer of Power BI, you have 30 or 40 Excel users.
Yeah.
Okay. You look around and you say, okay, I'm nothing, right? I'm nothing. And so when you see this difference in scale, you understand how huge these numbers are. So before saying this is going to replace, in my company I can replace this with that. Okay, in your company, but you count 0. I mean, you're not relevant. Statistically, you're not relevant. We have to collect the information, and the speed of adoption is completely different. We usually live in a bubble that we look at everything that happened, right? We have this. But this happened 2 months ago. It's already old news.
Too late. No.
Outside of the bubble, you know what is the main use of ChatGPT? ChatGPT, question, copy and paste. That's it. When I enter a room and I teach DAX, and the last time I think like 20-30% of the students, they were using ChatGPT or LLMs to create DAX code, and they went to the training because they realized that they were not able to obtain what they wanted. So sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work, and they weren't able to fix it when it didn't work. So they came to the training. But the thing is that their use of the LLM is what we consider 3 years old. To put this in perspective, so when you see people using, we have Rayfin, now everything, guys, you don't understand. The main issue for Rayfin is that you have to open VS Code or whatever other tool. The moment this is something inside Power BI desktop, then we talk. And I'm sure that Microsoft sooner or later will do that. But, there is no point in thinking that the future is the opening 2-3 GitHub and VS Code. I like it. I love it. But the people outside of the bubble don't want to hear about that. They say, no, come on, this is too difficult.
Absolutely.
They can just copy and paste the formula, they get it. But if you provide a window inside Power BI, like you have in VS Code with the chat window, that's perfect. They want this.
Yeah.
Once Microsoft does this, we talk.
But
again, we're not there yet.
No. I think we are still like beta testing with the enthusiasts and developers. Like, okay, developers, tell me if this works. Let's figure out the bugs, the whatever, why we figure out the business logistics, and now we're going to extract value from this. And eventually it will come into the final version of the product. So that's also my thinking. So Marco, I've held you up already past our bedtime, let's say. I thank you very much. But before we leave, I want to remember everybody that on October 30, we have the third edition of the Ticino Data Conference. You can go to tconf.ch to find all of the information, because other than the free conference where you will learn about everything data related, because there are a lot of sessions there, you will find SQLBI again, because in the 3 days leading to the conference, we have another session for the Mastering DAX course that SQLBI is actually holding in the same venue of the conference. So if you're up for training and a free conference with the best speakers of the world, come on, you know where to come. More information on the website. You will get everything in the link. Thanks for everybody for attending and for your passion and the thanks that we're getting in the chat. And Marco, thank you again for being here with me, and see you next time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for hosting.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.